So, sober 90. Let's talk about that. What were you looking for? Where were you? Where were you when you saw it?
So when I saw the Sober 90, I had just joined TLC, like literally
Okay.
just joined. Um, and so I think I was a couple days into the program and I kept every meeting that I would be on, it would come up, the Spring Sober 90, the Spring Sober 90. And my first thought was like, hell no, I'm not signing up for anything. Cause I had just March 1st, I had just finished grad school, like finally done after 3 years of grad school. And I was not ready to take on any like responsibilities or obligations or anything.
Yeah.
But I kept hearing about it and I was like, okay, fine. Like clearly this keeps coming up for me for a reason. So I signed up for the damn thing. And I was very newly sober, like just fresh into all of this. February 5th was my sobriety date,
Okay.
was my day one. So um, I came into it honestly with zero expectations. I came into it just to shut people up and stop telling me that I need to sign up for this damn thing. So that's why I did it, just out of pure spite.
Sometimes the best way, right?
Yeah, yeah, it worked out well.
And what really is, are there kind of certain elements of it that really resonated with you that you really appreciated?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So the first thing was that even though I'm still early in my sobriety and in my recovery, I've been doing a lot of work for a long time. I've been doing a lot of wellness and I've been doing a lot of therapy and somatic healing and breath work and meditation and yoga. I've been doing all these things for years. Um, I just couldn't, there was like a barrier. There was a barrier for me where I was like, I'm doing all these amazing things. Why don't I feel better? Why am I still a fucking mess? And it's
Yeah.
because I was also pouring tons of toxic poison into my body and numbing myself out on life. And so when I finally decided to stop doing that and got sober, I had all of these years of work that finally started pouring in. It's like they had like the floodgates were open, right? And it's like, oh, meditation actually works now. And I'm not like, I just felt like I was constantly trying to undo all the harm. And it reaches a point where you just can't undo it. So when I started in the sober 90, the thing that was really cool for me was I knew all the healing modalities. I just didn't know how they fit into a framework for my recovery and how they fit into a framework to help keep me sober. And so that for me was what the sober 90 did, was it said, here's all these amazing, beautiful healing modalities, which I was like, okay, cool, I know those.
Yeah.
And here's how they can help you stay sober, maintain your emotional sobriety, and basically like get yourself on a different trajectory with your life, because that was not happening for me. I was doing all the things, but I was also reliving the same insanity every day. So sober 90 put it into a context where I could actually like access it in a way that was supportive of my sobriety and my recovery. And I think the other piece of it, so it was like putting it in a framework and doing it in community, which I also did not have. I had no community. And that was like really such a catalyst for me of like, oh, I don't have to hide anything here. I can just show up and be my messy self, and that's perfect because everybody else is doing the same thing. And that's the part that makes me feel like I'm going to cry a little bit because it's so beautiful, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's the thing that really
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
And did you find in that community space that actually, because there are so many people coming together to do this, that you find people that you're resonating with and that are kind of giving you little steps up all the time, and it just helps you kind of step a bit further forward because there's somebody there and you kind of go, oh, I could do what they're doing, or they're lifting off from me, and actually here's people that within this community I'm finding a connection with. Did you get that as well?
So literally every single meeting that I would be on, there'd be some little nugget or some little takeaway from somebody, just through sharing their experience. And I go, oh yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I'm going through too. And I'm not alone in that.
Yeah.
Or they have some like little bit of wisdom, and I'm like, oh, either I've heard that before, but it didn't quite click, and you just said it in a way that now I understand. yeah, there was inevitably at least one really significant point of connection on every meeting that I would be on. And I also found people that I just resonated with generally,
Yeah.
that we kind of went offline and developed a little like accountability group where we would just check in every morning. Hey, how are you? How's it going? And the accountability group that I got put into, we have touch base every single day of the Sober 90 and beyond. So still this morning, I'm still talking to these people. So it's like uh on the macro level and on the micro level, it was all the points of connection. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Did you do all three types of meetings? So did you do the Sober 90 support meeting and the
Yep.
Q&A and the breakout
I
rooms?
did.
So you had the
Yeah.
full experience?
I did attend all of them. This piece might not be so much for the Instagram, it might be more for just for
Okay,
you.
that's no, it's fine.
Yeah.
This is all good.
So the thing I did struggle with a little bit on the Sober 90 meetings specifically was I felt like, and this is also just my personality, I went so hard into it, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Like, not looking back, no doubts, 100% just diving into the deep end with all this stuff. And sometimes on some of the calls, it would be people who were still cautiously trying to dip a toe in, and I'm not saying that I can't obviously learn from that. I felt like my questions were just different.
Yeah.
And so I felt myself sometimes on those calls holding back a little bit because I was like, well, I don't want to distract from the person who's like genuinely struggling because I'm ready to get like fucking philosophical over here on it, So I'm like, just shut up, But what I did honestly was I toggled back and forth between just the regular TLC meetings. So I would like do my homework in Sober 90 and then go over to like my Louise meeting or my Janelle meeting or whatever and kind of play it out there a little bit. And so I don't know, like maybe that's a me thing. I felt a little bad because I was really experiencing so much success. And I know that there were so many people who still at the end were still on day one or still
Yeah.
were having to go with the homework. And so I honestly, I don't know that I navigated that particularly skillfully, but I did get everything that I needed from every meeting that I ever attended. Just a lot of them weren't Sober 90 meetings. Does that make sense?
But that's also good, right? Because it's that thing of here is Sober 90, but also here's that wider space. So you have
Yeah,
that opportunity. So you did quite a lot, didn't you? Of yes, I've got the Sober 90, but I'm also wanting to know who are these other people? What else is going on?
absolutely.
Speak to me from beyond this beginning piece.
Yeah. And it's interesting in a way, I feel like that kind of worked out well for me because even though I became a little less active in the actual Sober 90, like the group meetings and the breakouts and all of that, but I became super active in TLC generally. I was like, well, I got to
Yeah.
hit a meeting every day. And so I did over in TLC. And so then and maybe this is a takeaway, when Sober 90 ended, it almost wasn't any different for me. I was like, well, I'm still over here doing my thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Excellent. Excellent.
yeah.
How did you find the homework pieces?
I loved the homework. But I'm a true like student. Like I love homework. And the thing truly that was so cool about it was, well, most of it was not new to me. I was like, I have done all of this homework before, but never in a context of sobriety and recovery. So it
Yeah.
had this whole other meaning, right? And so there was a depth to the homework that I really, really loved. Like talking about your story. I've done that before in different contexts, but not in the like, oh, I'm saving my life context,
Yeah.
you know? So that part was neat. And I think the thing that helped the way that the curriculum was structured was starting it off with the information about the devastating effects of alcohol generally, just like put a big highlighter over top of why I was doing this generally. Like, oh, I know that for me, if I don't do this work and I go back out and start pouring this poison into my body again, like, it will end very badly for me. It was just the stakes were really high for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that doing the homework, which, yeah, I've done all these exercises before, but doing it in the context of keeping myself from something that means death for me I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like it. It was really powerful.
Did you try getting sober before joining TLC? Did you spend time dabbling with it, looking at it? Did you have any periods where you managed it before, or was TLC kind of like oh, hang on, there's a thing here where people have stopped drinking? What's that like?
So my experience was that I got sober 15 years ago.
Okay.
I went into a 12-step program 15 years ago, and I did successfully get sober for a year and a half. Um, in hindsight, because I had never done the true emotional recovery piece, it
Yeah.
didn't stick, and I went back out and drank for another 13 and a half years. After that first burst of sobriety, no, I could never maintain any period of sobriety whatsoever, not even a week. You know, I would tell my husband, like after a particularly bad night, like, okay, I'm just gonna like lay off the sauce for a couple of days a week. I would make it a day or two. And it was really disheartening because it got to the point for me where I just felt like it wasn't fun anymore. Like I was just in its clutches, like it had me. And yeah, and I didn't know the way out because I didn't really want to go back to 12 step. I felt like, you know, I wasn't drawn to that. Um, but I didn't know what the alternative was. I really didn't.
Yeah.
Like 12 step or just you die of this thing? Like how does that And so I was on a road trip. I have a sister who is very ill and I have to drive 12 hours back and forth between our houses when I go see her. And so I just listened to We Can Do Hard Things like on a loop because it's that podcast just really calms my nerves. And I heard the interview with Laura and I heard about TLC, and it was at the exact moment where I knew I had to do something. And that was it. I was like, well, I don't know what else to do, so fine, I'll sign up for that. Like, why not? Um, and so I had, again, no expectations. I just came into it because I really didn't know how to do it on my own. And I was like, oh my God, there's this whole world here.
It's like a
It is.
parallel universe, isn't it? It
It
really
is.
is.
It's like you've been here this whole
How did I not know? Where were you hiding? How can you be there? It's
time. And you've been
crazy.
here this whole
Yeah.
time.
Waiting
Yeah.
for you, right?
Just waiting, you know, for that perfect moment when I was like, by the time I came to TLC, like I was ready. I wasn't questioning, like I was ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Um, let's see what else is there. So the forum, being part of the group on the forum and having somewhere to go and talk about homework and all the other bits and the daily plans, how were they for you?
It was really great because it gave me such a level of accountability, you know. Um, I didn't want to, there were times where keeping up with the homework was a little hard. I was on vacation or, you know, life stuff. Um, but I knew that when I would get back to it, that everybody was still there. Like everybody was still there doing the thing, and I would catch up, or maybe I would just listen to them and learn their lessons. But it really was, I think, having that structure, having that accountability, but also that non-judgmental support. Because for those of us who maybe are like have perfectionist tendencies or a little type A or a little high strung, um, there also can be this tendency to prescribe to the absolutes, like either I'm doing this thing perfectly or not at all. And the forum was such this rare and beautiful place where it's like, just come up and do it imperfectly. Like just be
Yeah.
here and do it messily. And that was so refreshing. Like I could show up and be like, didn't do the homework, but I'm here. And they'd be like, sweet, you know? And I was like, oh, I need more of that in my life, more of that acceptance, more of that, like, you know, or even if I had shown up and been like, yeah, I drank last night, which I didn't, I managed to maintain my
Yeah.
sobriety, but if I had, I knew that that was also okay, you know?
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? And how are the coaches? How were the coaching team for you? Because obviously I wasn't
I
on it, so you have free reign. Not
yeah, I've said it before and I've said it again, and this is for the Sober 90 coaches and just for TLC hosts generally, like y'all are saints. Y'all are like you are my heroes because I know that these are just human beings who are also navigating their own recovery, right? So it's not like there's some sort of like gurus. It's not the Dalai Lama sitting there who's had this beautiful, magical life. It's like real people who really get what I'm going through. And I don't know what the like training or enablement is you guys go through, but their ability to hold space is nothing short of magic, you know? Whatever we would bring to them, throw at them. And I know sometimes the questions or the challenges or whatever were not easy, but they handled it with so much grace. And so much just, I think, like empathy and compassion. And I mean, I never personally needed to do this, but if I ever felt like I needed to show up and just be like, this is bullshit and everything sucks and this is garbage, like there would have been space for that. you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
and I feel like that's such a gift. Like I didn't have to show up and be anything other than who I was, where I was. So let's take your balloon and go because I'm on a call. Love you. Bye.
He's stressful.
My stress buddy. Bye. So yeah, I felt safe. I felt held, and I felt like no matter what direction my journey took or anybody else's journey, like, yeah, there's room for that here. Um, they might need to go off and take care of themselves afterwards because I'm sure there are things that were probably hard for them. But it was for me, there were just so many big takeaways about just how to do life, how to show up for each other. Like they didn't solve my problems. They didn't, tell me what to do or how to do my recovery. They held space and they shared their experiences where it was appropriate, and like that was it, and respected my journey.
And it's amazing how that works, isn't it?
It's very
Just kind of
powerful.
seeing somebody doing their thing and kind of going, oh right, you're just doing it, aren't you? There's no magic wand. I'm not going to kind of go skipping off into the sunset with this thing. But actually, the way you are doing it is something I really aspire to. I found
Yeah.
that when I first kind of went into sobriety and looked at people doing stuff, it was like, oh right, you're doing the doing, but without alcohol, and that's such a shift.
Yeah. It is such a shift because I think when we come into these spaces, like there was a reason we drank, right?
Yep.
There was a reason that we needed to, and I know we've said this many times in the meetings, like we drank because to not like life was so painful for whatever reason that also could have been a type of death for us, right? So in a way we were trying very imperfectly to save ourselves, and so when you remove the alcohol, when you remove the numbing agent, that reason is still there. And I think it's so important to have individuals that you can trust, to acknowledge that that is okay. There's nothing wrong with like feeling I am completely overwhelmed with emotion. I'm completely overwhelmed with shame, abject fear, whatever. Like, yeah, that's how it goes. And that they've been there. They've been through their own experience, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say to somebody who's sitting watching this, thinking about doing this over 90 and not quite sure?
Absolutely. I think that again, for me, I went into it with no expectations. I didn't expect it to be any particular thing. Um, but I'm so glad that I joined out of spite or for whatever reason. I did it. I'm so glad that I joined because I think that for somebody in early sobriety, I would have had a much harder time navigating those early days, or even now coming into it at a later stage. I think it's just a lot harder without some sort of really concrete structure, um, a foundation to support you. And I think that is what a program like this can do is go, here is how you can be successful. Here are some tools that you can obtain so that you can have whatever your own version of success is. And it's not that I couldn't have done that on my own. I think I would have struggled a lot more with it and felt a lot more alone in the process. And instead, I got to do it with like dozens of other people supporting me and cheering me on, you know, my wins and my challenges, cheering me on through all of that. And so I think that if somebody's interested in it, um everybody's experience is going to be different, but I can't imagine doing it and not getting something really powerful out of it.
Excellent. And what have you taken away from it? What are you doing now that you wouldn't have been doing, do you think, if you hadn't done Sober 90?
Um, well, I'm still sober, so there's that. And fully committed to it. And I think that like the big takeaway for me is that it helped me realize like this is my life now. Like this is what I do. Like recovery is my life, and that's a good thing. That's a positive thing for me, for my kids, for my husband, for everybody. And it also opened me up to, so I'm doing like the Kiola embodiment course
Okay.
now, which is really fun, by the way. It's really, really
Yes,
fun.
I could see you on that one. I did think you might be.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm loving it. And doing the Sober 90, I was like, oh yeah, I sign up for like recovery programs now. That's what I do. Because as somebody who, when we come into these things with like cynicism or maybe experiences that left a bad taste in our mouth or whatever, it opened me up to yeah, maybe I can be a joiner of things, you know, certain things with certain people.
But it's important, isn't it? That continued learning and growing becomes something we start to explore as a gaining thing, not necessarily an achieving and completing piece. It's about acknowledging that there's some growth space here and it might lead on to something else. And we kind of shift a bit, I think, in, and what am I trying to say? It's not necessarily about doing a thing and getting to an end point. It's about acknowledging that I'm going to do something and it's going to move me forwards rather than I'm going to do it and get to an end and that's going to be a box ticked. It's actually, it creates a way of us understanding that there's this space that we step into, grow with, and it will come with another space to maybe step into and grow with. And we become much more open, that evolving piece, rather than it being about a I'm going to go in, I'm going to do something, and that's going to sort that out, and I'm going to tick the box and then move on. Does that make
I,
sense?
I think that's exactly what it is, because as a chronic you know, overachiever, tick the boxer kind of person that I was for much of my life, I think it is a real mental shift, because what it feels like to me now, it doesn't feel like, oh, I completed the Sober 90. It doesn't, I mean, I technically did. I did complete the Sober 90, but it was more like, oh, I unlocked that level.
Yeah.
Cool. Like you're saying, like, what's next? And it just feels like it's an unfolding is what it feels like to me, versus a series of accomplishments, which quite honestly can feel quite hollow and
Yeah.
meaningless, versus, oh, this is the way that I move through life now, you know? Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
It's
There's loads. There's been loads in there. Is there
yeah.
anything else you wanted to add? I think we got, that was quite an intense run through.
I think the only thing that I would add is, again, I really did not know what I was getting into when I came to TLC or when I started the Sober 90. I just kind of blindly went and did things because I didn't know what else to do. And I am so grateful that I stumbled into a space that I still have moments where I'm like, is this real? Like, this is really happening? Like, I am really in this community that bit, and not that it's nothing's perfect, and I don't need it to be perfect, but that functions in a way that I feel like the whole world should function, where we show up with our messy, imperfect, annoying selves, whatever, and everybody's like, sweet, glad you're here. And that we have access to these beautiful programs, these beautiful offerings. Um, yeah, I am just deeply grateful. And like, y'all are going to have to kick me out because I'm not going anywhere because this is amazing.
Oh, it's lovely. Right. Okay, let me just stop that then and pass that on to Brooke.